Hi, I'm Ryan from Amber Elm. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to create some of the elements of the lo-fi genre that I like infusing into my music. If you're just getting into lo-fi and looking for some helpful tools, these examples could be pretty useful. But if you aren't exclusively into the lo-fi genre and say maybe you really love the music of Max Richter, Olafur Arnolds, Nils Fromm, stick around because the elements that I'm going to be talking about can really be used across the board for any genre, just to add a little something extra to your music. So throughout the video, I'll be covering drums, tape sounds, Foley, and a little bit of instrumentation. I usually give a little bit of prologue before getting into the meat of the video, but today I thought I'd do it a little bit differently and dive right in. So if you want the whole why I do what I do thing, watch till the end, or skip straight there. I don't give a fuck. Drums. One of my favorite elements of the lo-fi genre are the drums. Adding this to tracks is a no-brainer, but how exactly should you go about it? Well, I think there are three ways. The first is using sample packs. It's by far the easiest and the fastest. You just download a sample pack, open up the samples, and you're off to the races. It's what I did when I first started, and I think it's really great because if you just want to get an idea of what that flavor will do in whatever style you're writing, you don't have to put all the work into creating it yourself. You can just kind of load it up and go. I'll link some of the sample packs that I used down below. I think they were all free at the time that I used them, so I'm not sure if that's still the case, but check them out. The second way is just using the samples that already come in your DAW, for me that's Logic, and process them so they can have that lo-fi quality. So for this, let's jump into Logic and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here in Logic, I just wanted to show how to make kind of a quick and dirty lo-fi drum sound. We'll start with a kick, and I've loaded all these presets on there, but I took them all off so you can hear what it sounds like beforehand. Here's the kick by itself. And it's got like a really long tail, so we'll address that eventually. The first thing you're going to do is come over and get an EQ. I usually like using FabFilter, but for this, I wanted to use kind of stock plugins. And the first thing you're doing is just shaving off a lot of that high end. All right, took a little bit of the low off. And then some people like to layer the EQ, so I thought I'd give that a shot. So I added a second one with kind of a steeper drop off. Okay. And the next thing I added, because of that long tail, is an enveloper. And what I did is I just set the release time right there and took the gain all the way down. And it really just kills it. Take that time all the way up. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Then I'm using just a preset in a stock compressor just to beef it a little bit. Now, this one is kind of up to you. I like to pitch shift them a little bit, and I'm actually just using a little alter board to give it a little bit of drive. I'm not actually shifting the pitch at all, but here it is with it and without it. Again, it's a really subtle difference. And then I'll saturate it with a decapitator from Sound Toys. I really like this. And that's it for the kick. So let's head over to the snare drum. That's what our drum sounds like. And for all these, I just came over here and picked a drum sound, like a drum kit, and just recorded each MIDI note in. So for the snare, I'm going to kind of start the same way with a pretty strong EQ, taking out a lot of those high ends and some of the low frequencies as well. So takes it to that. Again, I'm going to add the enveloper because the release of this is pretty long. There we go. And then I will pitch shift this one a little bit. I came up to about 5, drove it a little bit. And then again, add some saturation with the decapitator to beef it up a little bit. And then moving on to the hi-hat, let's start mangling it. So EQ, cut off the highs, cut off the lows. Of course, enveloper and a little alter boy. Now, the fun thing with the hi-hats is you can actually make kind of cool snare sounds if you mess with the pitch shifting. Once you're happy with all those sounds, you can open sort of a drum machine designer type plugin and drag your samples straight in. And you can also mess with them more in here. But so let's take our hi-hat, and I'm just going to drag it into my hi-hat spot. Take my snare and my kick. And once it's in here, and if you're in Logic, this will be a little more helpful, but you can kind of trim your samples where you want them to start and end. Don't forget to fade them. For our snare, and our hi-hat. And then in here, you can really start to mess with everything. If you want to pitch this up, which I usually think sounds kind of good on hi-hats. Once you have that all, I kind of just wanted to show you in context what it would all sound like. So I recorded a little piano line, something that wouldn't really be considered lo-fi hip-hop necessarily, and adding this element to it. So that's pretty much it. If I use different sounds for the original drum set, all those drums would sound way different. So the sky's the limit. You can experiment with all sorts of different sounds. Start with 80s kicks or, punk rock kicks, whatever you want. It's going to sound different once you kind of shape that tone the way you want it to. And not all these will work with every song you're writing. It really does take a little bit of tweaking sometimes to get it the way you want it. And third is my favorite way, and that is making your own samples. It does take a bit more time, but in all honesty, if you do it right, you can't beat it because you'll have a unique sound that no one else is using. So for kick, you can find anything that thumps. I have used this table, this door, this chest. Try anything. The process of making something kicky is all about how you EQ it, compress it, saturate it, pitch it up or down. For snares, outside of just recording a snare drum, I've used a lot of different things, from chopsticks to this drum key, which I've used on this door, this table, this chest, well, not this chest, but you get the idea. I'll probably make another video dedicated to making your own drum sounds. The process is pretty similar to the way I was describing it before, but let me know in the comments if that's something that you'd be interested in. The only real difference is you're recording the source instead of using the MIDI from your DAW. Tape. So outside of the lo-fi genre, tape is one of my favorite tools in the studio. You can get cool delays, you can make really cool instruments, and you can do shameless plugs for the algorithm, apparently. Adding it on tracks sort of instantly gives you that lo-fi feel. A lot of what I do with my piano is running it through different tape machines, whether that's my reel-to-reel, a cassette recorder, or a plugin. And then based on what I ultimately want the track to do, I mangle it accordingly. Sometimes you want the whole thing to have that nice old sound, and sometimes you just want to add a touch. So let's go through both. When I want the whole track to have that nice warm and worn saturation and tape quality, I usually go straight through the reel-to-reel, and I'll do this in one of two ways. I'll either record straight onto it, or I'll record a track in Logic and then feed that back into the tape machine. I'll usually mic up my piano with 4 mics, so if I'm going for a more detailed recording, I usually opt to record straight into Logic first and then go into the reel-to-reel because it only has 2 channels. And there are a ton of ways to add character to this even more. One of my favorite ways is playing an octave up from where I want the recording heard and faster than I want it recorded. So the second part requires a little bit of planning. If you can swing it though, it will add a really great quality to your overall sound. I only have 2 speeds on my reel-to-reel, so it just drops the pitch down an octave. And if you have a reel-to-reel with pitch control, you can play with this a lot more, and it's pretty incredible. Hard to reproduce live, but pretty incredible. This is what it sounds like after I've slowed down the tape and pitched it down. This is what it sounds like just played in the correct octave. It's a pretty subtle difference, but even 1%, you add up those 1% over time and it can create something really great and special at the end. Another way is to give it some warble by fiddling with it. Did I just say fiddling with it? Fiddling with it. By messing with the tape while it's recording back into your DAW. Just tap it, hold it down while it's recording, talk dirty to it, whatever you want. And if you just want a touch of that tape sound, you can do anything or everything I just mentioned, but layer it with a clean piano track that hasn't been run through the tape machine, and you can just automate it in and out as you like. And I do this with lots of instruments, but honestly, when I just want to add a touch of tape, I use plugins. It's just faster. My favorite tape plugin is from Universal Audio, and it's the Ampex Reel-to-Reel, and that's because it has this sun-baked cassette preset. Once I get rid of some of the unwanted hum and noise that the preset includes, it is perfect on a bus and adds some nice wow and flutter, which in just some small doses sounds just like movement. And if you don't have access to the UA plugins because you don't have the hardware, Waves makes a really great one, and there are plenty of other free and cheap ones available that will get you pretty close. And hey, they might even sound better. It's all a matter of preference and what works on a given track. In my opinion, tape sounds great on piano, on Rhodeses. What's the plural of Rhodes? Rhodeses. On piano, Rhodes, synths. Tape sounds good on everything. And last up, Foley. Foley is just that ambience that is added to a track. In lo-fi hip-hop, it could be rain. I feel like it's always rain. It could be rain or a busy street, fire crackling, vinyl pops, a bunch of other stuff. Adding Foley may be one of the most near and dear to me because while it's going to be buried down there in the mix, I just like knowing that it's there. It sets the mood for a piece, and by recording it yourself, it can give some added meaning. I made this video a while back where I recorded my trees after Austin went through this massive freeze. Promise this video isn't to get you to watch all my other videos. Once I EQ'd the holy hell out of them and buried them way down in the mix, it probably just sounded like low rumblings or weird vinyl or something. But I knew what they were, and the piece was about that time and place, and it was really nice to have like an audio picture of that incorporated with the piece. Outside of me being cheesy and like weirdly romantic about Foley, it also gives a chance for pieces that aren't in the lo-fi hip-hop space to sort of tip their cap to that genre. And that's really what this video is all about. Not a tutorial on how to make lo-fi hip-hop, but rather how to borrow some of the elements from it to incorporate it into different styles of music. I really enjoy a bunch of different styles of music, and it's always been really hard for me to stick to writing one style exclusively for very long. This goes back as far back as I can remember. I used to really want to be a film composer, and a big reason for it was I could be writing a ton of different styles of music all the time. But after working on various projects, I found that while it was really, really fun and challenging, it was hard being told what kind of music to write. And a few times I would add something to a track that made it amazing, probably just a little bit better, that a director thought was a distraction, because in context it probably was. Just as anyone who writes music seriously for a long period, you get better and you learn new tricks. When I decided to stop seriously pursuing film scoring and focusing on my own music, I like to use these tricks together because I could. Nothing was stopping me from writing a skate punk inspired neoclassical lo-fi trap piece, except for it sounding awful. Just awful. But seriously, unless you're trying to break into a specific genre, there's nothing holding you back from writing anything you want, adding anything to anything. If you're just trying to make good art, there's no right or wrong way to do music, just what you like and what you don't like. I guess that's my comforting thought of the day. If you made it this far and got something out of the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I'm almost at 100 subscribers, which is tiny by YouTube standards, but to be honest, it's pretty fucking cool to me. I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers by June 15th, so I'm going to be doing something fun for the first 100 people who sign up, and just trying to build a community where people can share their ideas, their thoughts, and experiences. So yeah, join us. Also, leave a comment if there's something that I inevitably missed or you want me to talk about in a future video. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.